Imagine holding in your hand what looks like an ordinary dime from 2001, something you might find in your pocket change. You glance at it, see the familiar face of Roosevelt, see the tiny letter P marking that shows it was minted in Philadelphia, and you think, that's just 10 cents, right? 10 cents in value, nothing special. But what if I told you that the very same coin, the Liberty 1 dime 2001p, in certain conditions, and especially when it has certain mistakes or mint errors, can be worth many times its face value, even hundreds or thousands of dollars in the eyes of collectors and numismatists? What if that ordinary dime could be hiding a rare story, a unique production accident, or a mint anomaly that can turn a small change piece into a collector's treasure and a profitable find? Today we're going to uncover that story. We're going to talk about the history, the production, and the minting process of the 2001p dime. We're going to explore the many different types of mint errors and mistakes that can occur during the striking of coins, and we're going to explain exactly why some of these error coins are worth so much more than 10 cents. If you've ever wondered whether that old dime in your drawer is really just 10 cents, then stick around, because the world of coin collecting is full of fascinating twists, surprises, and sometimes jaw-dropping valuations that come from unexpected places. The Liberty 1 dime 2001p is one of those coins that most people recognize as everyday pocket change. The United States Mint produced this dime at the Philadelphia Mint in 2001, and the vast majority of these coins entered circulation like any other modern dime. According to most coin value guides, a standard circulated 2001p Roosevelt dime without any special features is still worth its face value of 10 cents, or maybe a modest premium at best if it's in unusually good condition. A coin in average circulated condition might still trade around 10 cents or a bit more, and only those in very high uncirculated grades normally fetch a few dollars in the collector market. In fact, typical estimates for this coin in MS Mint state grades are often just a few dollars, and dealers routinely list them around this range, for example MS 65 or MS 66 graded pieces. But here's where it gets interesting. That mundane value is based on coins that are typical and without any unusual characteristics, just the normal result of billions of pieces struck that year. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 1 billion 2001p dimes that year, so in terms of sheer numbers, the typical business strike is not rare in the least. Yet within that enormous production run, there are hidden surprises that can emerge, and the reasons they matter start with understanding how coins are actually made at the mint. A coin like the 2001p dime begins as a planchet, a blank piece of metal made to precise specifications of diameter, thickness, and composition. For modern dimes, that composition is a copper core with a copper-nickel outer layer, giving the coin its silvery appearance. The planchet is fed into an automated coining press that uses dies engraved metal pieces carrying the design to strike the images and lettering onto both sides of the coin at the same instant. Every step of this automated process is carefully controlled, but sometimes mistakes happen, sometimes mechanical issues occur, and sometimes parts of the equipment behave in ways they weren't supposed to. When those mistakes occur at the exact moment a coin is struck, the coin that emerges can carry those errors forever. That's how a dime that should be worth 10 cents ends up becoming a rare and valuable collector's item, because it was struck in a slightly, drastically, or visibly different way than normal. These are called error coins, and coin collectors around the world prize them not for their face value, but for their rarity, uniqueness, and historical interest. Let's go into the kinds of errors that can make a 2001p dime worth more than you might expect, starting with some of the most dramatic mint errors that have been documented for this year and this coin type. One of the most valuable error varieties that has been recorded is the partial collar error. The collar die is what holds the planchet in place during striking, and when a planchet only seats partially inside this collar before the dies strike, you can end up with a coin where one side has a fully formed rim and the other side's rim is irregular or incomplete. Sometimes these partial collar errors produce a distinctive railroad rim effect. When you look at the edge of the coin, it appears doubled or unusual in profile rather than the normal single-reeded edge. A 2001p dime with a partial collar error and graded at a very high level like MS 69 once sold at a major auction for $1,450, which is an enormous jump from 10 cents. Another dramatic anomaly is the double rim error. Imagine dropping a seemingly ordinary 2010D dime into your hand, one of hundreds of millions minted that year, thinking it's just 10 cents and nothing more. But what if I told you that the very same dime, the one with a tiny D mint mark from Denver, can be worth tens, hundreds, and even thousands of dollars to the right collector when it has certain errors, mistakes, or rare mint anomalies? What seems like pocket change could actually be a hidden treasure worth far more than its face value if you know what to look for. That's exactly what we're exploring today, the intriguing world of the Liberty One Dime 2010D, why most are ordinary and worth little more than face value, and how certain error coins from this year can command astonishing premiums in the numismatic market. The 2010D Roosevelt dime was produced at the Denver Mint and released into circulation like most modern coins. According to numismatic data, approximately 562 million Roosevelt dimes were struck with the D-Mint mark in 2010, which means the chances of finding any individual example with a dramatic error are very slim compared to the sheer volume in circulation. In standard condition with no unusual features, these 2010 D dimes are typically worth just a few dollars or less depending on their preservation. For example, uncirculated examples without any errors generally trade in the low single-digit range or slightly above based on grading, and even high mint state standards might only bring modest premiums of around $20, $50 when graded highly by professional services. Yet within that enormous population of ordinary dimes, production mistakes can and do happen. Even with the U.S. Mint's strict quality control systems, misaligned planchets, malfunctioning striking presses, flawed dies, improper planchet preparation, and metal layering issues can result in coins that deviate visibly from the norm. Those deviations can transform an everyday coin into a collectible curiosity worth significantly more than 10 cents. Some of the most dramatic examples have even sold for over $1,000 or more at auctions and private sales because they carry rare errors that appeal to collectors who specialize in modern era coins. Before we dive into the specific errors that make 2010 D Roosevelt dimes valuable, it helps to understand a bit about how coins are made. A coin starts as a planchet, a blank metal disc carefully punched from sheets of metal with specific composition, in this case, a copper core with a copper-nickel outer layer to produce the familiar silvery look of modern dimes. The planchet is cleaned, annealed, heated and cooled to achieve optimal softness for striking, and then fed into a powerful coining press. Two dies, one for the obverse with Roosevelt's portrait and one for the reverse with the torch and inscription, strike the planchet simultaneously with great force, expanding the metal into the intricate designs. Every step of that process must be precisely controlled. When something goes slightly off, like a planchet not being centered properly, a die clashing with its mate, or an outer layer not bonding correctly, the resulting coin can display unusual features that collectors prize. One of the most dramatic and highly documented error types affecting the 2010 D Roosevelt dime series is the missing clad layer error. Modern dimes have an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded to a core of pure copper. Occasionally, due to contamination of the metal surfaces or insufficient bonding pressure in the planchet production phase, that outer layer can separate or fail to bond properly. When this happens, the coin will show the reddish copper core on one or both sides where the silver-colored layer should be. These coins can be visually striking, one side shiny silvery while the other side reveals bright copper. Collectors find this type of error compelling because it's so obvious and impossible to replicate artificially without sophisticated equipment. In one well-documented case from this series, a 2010 D dime with a partial missing reverse-clad layer graded at MS65 sold at auction for approximately $1,320, demonstrating how much value a dramatic error can add above face value. Another dramatic mechanical error is the broad strike. During regular minting, a collar die holds the planchet's edge in place so it expands properly under the force of the dies. If the collar die fails to engage or is missing, the planchet will spread outward when struck, producing a coin with a larger than normal diameter and inconsistent or missing reeded edges. The design on both sides can still be fully visible, but the overall shape is stretched and noticeably abnormal. A 2010 D Roosevelt dime with a broad strike graded MS64 reportedly sold for around $900 in 2018, showing that even within modern issues, collectors are willing to pay hundreds of dollars for coins exhibiting dramatic structural anomalies. Another error closely are. Now imagine discovering that the very same dime, if it bears certain errors, mistakes, or unusual mint characteristics, could actually be worth many times its face value, hundreds of dollars, and in rare cases potentially much more, because collectors prize coins that deviate from the ordinary. That's the intriguing journey we're about to take into the world of the Liberty One Dime 2017 D, the Roosevelt dime minted in Denver in 2017, and why some specimens are worth far more than their face value due to production errors, mint anomalies, and collector demand. The 2017 D Roosevelt dime is one of the most common modern circulating coins. In that year, the Denver Mint produced over 1.29 billion of these dimes, meaning the odds of any single coin being unusual are exceptionally low but not zero. Most circulated 2017 D dimes are worth about 15 cents in typical condition, and even uncirculated examples without any special features generally fetch only a few dollars at most. Collectors who specialize in standard circulation coins might pay up to around $2 for a certified mint state coin from this issue with no errors. That's a nice premium over 10 cents, but not life-changing by any means. However, the numismatic world is built on exceptions, and sometimes those exceptions come from errors or unexpected twists during the minting process. Coins with genuine mint errors are rare, precisely because the U.S. Mint operates with strict quality controls, but when errors do slip through, they attract the attention of collectors who see beyond the face value and appreciate the story and rarity behind the mistake. For modern Roosevelt dimes like the 2017 D, errors that might otherwise seem subtle can translate into significant value because they are unusual and require knowledge to spot and verify. To understand how ordinary change can become valuable, it's helpful to think about how a typical 2017 D dime was made. Planchet's metal discs composed of a copper core bonded with a copper-nickel outer layer are prepared, annealed, cleaned, and then fed into a coining press where two dies strike them with great force, imprinting the obverse design President Franklin D. Roosevelt's portrait and the reverse design a torch and branches symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. In an ideal process, every coin comes out within tight tolerances for design, weight, and appearance. But when something goes slightly off, like a planchet not seated correctly, a die misaligned, foreign material on the surfaces, or improper bonding between layers, the resulting coin can display anomalies that catch the eye of a collector. These anomalies often reveal clues about what went wrong during production, and that's part of why they are collectible. One of the most striking and recognizable error types for 2017 D Roosevelt dimes is the missing clad layer error. Because modern dimes have a thin outer layer of copper nickel bonded to a copper core, a flaw in that bond can cause the outer layer to flake off or fail to adhere in some areas of the coin. When this happens, you might see bare copper exposed on one side of the coin while the other side still appears silvery. This contrast is visually dramatic and clearly different from normal circulating coins, and that makes such examples valuable to error collectors. A documented example of a 2017 D dime with a missing clad layer graded around MS-60 sold at auction for around $100, showing how much interest even relatively modest examples can attract when they have eye-catching errors. Another type of error that can fetch collector interest is the die clash error. This happens when the two dies strike each other without a planchet between them at some stage of the production process. That clash transfers parts of one side's design onto the other, so when the next planchets are struck, elements of the opposite side's design may appear faintly or ghost-like on one or both sides of the coin. On a Roosevelt dime, this might mean seeing faint elements of the torch design on the obverse near Roosevelt's chin or vice versa. A 2017 D dime with a die clash error graded at MS-63 was documented selling for around $120 at auction, which is a significant pickup compared to face value and typical uncirculated prices. Closely related are rim cut errors. A cut occurs when a piece of the die breaks off, often near its edge, leaving a void that then causes excess metal to fill in on coins struck afterward. The result on the coin is a raised lump or blob near the rim where metal flowed into the gap. Collectors find these interesting because they literally represent a broken piece of the minting die's history captured on the coin. A 2017 P dime with a rim cut error was documented selling for around $125, which, while not astronomical, is again a strong multiple of face value when this error is in a collectible grade. A broad strike error I. Imagine picking up a dime from your pocket, glancing at it for a second, and dumping it back into your change because you think it's worth just 10 cents, but then discovering that the very same coin could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars because it has a rare minting error, a mistake during production, or an unusual mint mark variation. That's exactly the astonishing potential hidden in something as common as the Liberty 1 dime 2017 P from the United States Mint. This coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint with the P mint mark is one of the most widespread modern dimes, yet in rare instances it can become a collector's treasure worth far more than its face value. Today we're going deep into the history, market values, error types, and collecting potential of the 2017 P dime, exploring why most examples circulate at pocket change value while rare mistakes can create genuine excitement and real money for collectors and hobbyists alike. The 2017 P. Roosevelt dime was produced in massive quantities by the U.S. Mint at Philadelphia. According to coin valuation guides, more than 1.4 billion of these coins were struck and released into circulation, making them extremely common and easy to find in everyday pocket change. In average circulated condition, most of these dimes are worth about 15 cents, slightly more than face value, because collectors will pay a modest premium for coins in good condition. Even uncirculated examples with no errors often only fetch around $2 or so, depending on overall quality and preservation. Despite that huge production run and the ordinary nature of most coins from this year, the 2017 P dime still holds fascinating possibilities for collectors when it deviates from the norm. Why? Because errors and mistakes that occur during the minting process can make specific individual coins much more valuable. The U.S. Mint produces billions of coins every year, and even with sophisticated machinery and quality controls, small production anomalies sometimes slip through and end up in circulation. Those anomalies may be rare, but when they occur, they can transform a dime worth 10 cents into something that attracts serious collector interest. Before we explore the types of errors that can add collector value, it's worth pausing to understand why a coin like the 2017 P dime is normally so common. The Roosevelt dime has been produced since 1946 as a circulating coin honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and in 2017 the Philadelphia Mint struck over 1 billion of the coins for everyday commerce. They feature a copper-nickel-clad composition designed for durability and widespread use, with the obverse depicting Roosevelt's portrait and the reverse showing a torch flanked by olive and oak branches. The P Mint mark on the obverse above the date indicates Philadelphia production. This is significant because 2017 was among the early years where the Philadelphia Mint used the P Mint mark on circulation Roosevelt dimes as part of modern minting practices. In typical circulation, the price for a 2017 P dime without any unusual characteristics is modest. A worn example might be worth around 15 cents simply due to collector interest in early modern coins, and uncirculated examples certified in high mint state grades might fetch between $2 and $5 or more if visually appealing and well preserved. Price guides show that top-grade specimens can even surpass $5 in some markets, particularly if the coin receives a high certification grade such as MS-68 from a respected grading service. But what really makes some individual 2017 P dimes interesting and potentially valuable is when they exhibit errors or varieties that occur during the coin production process. These errors are not intentional but result from unique circumstances in the planchet preparation, die production, or striking stages. When collectors identify these anomalies, they often assign values many times above the coin's face value, because the error itself becomes the collectible element. One common type of error that can dramatically increase a dime's value is the missing clad layer error. Modern Roosevelt dimes are made by bonding an outer layer of copper nickel to a core of pure copper. If the bond between the outer layers and the core fails due to contamination, temperature variation, or impurities in the metal, the nickel cladding can flake or peel off in places, exposing the underlying copper core. On such a coin you might see one side appearing normally silvery while the other shows exposed copper in patches or across entire surfaces. Collectors find this visually dramatic and historically interesting because it reveals a rare production issue. Market examples show that a 2017 P dime with a missing clad layer error graded in uncirculated condition has sold for hundreds of dollars at auction, such as documented sales where collectors paid significant My dears, now imagine discovering that the very same dime could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars because of a rare minting error, a production mistake, or an odd variation that slipped past the U.S. Mint's quality control. What looks like everyday small change could secretly be a collector's treasure and a cash-worthy find. That's why today we're going deep into the fascinating world of the 2018 P Roosevelt dime, explaining its history, its circulation value, the kinds of mint errors and anomalies that make specific coins valuable, and the possibilities that turn an ordinary dime into a coveted collectible with significant value beyond its face worth. The 2018 P Roosevelt dime was produced and released into general circulation by the Philadelphia Mint in large quantities. According to reliable valuation resources, over 1.19 billion of these dimes were struck at Philadelphia in 2018, making this coin a very common modern circulating issue. Most of these coins lived out their lives in everyday commerce, passing through vending machines, cash registers, and banks without ever being noticed by collectors. In typical circulated condition, a 2018 P dime without any special features is usually worth about 15 cents, which is just a tiny premium above face value for coins in good but worn condition. If you find one in uncirculated condition with no errors, collectors might pay around $2 to $3 for it, with exceptional high-grade specimens sometimes bringing slightly more. Despite its large mintage and common presence in circulation, the 2018 P dime can become significantly more valuable when it has mint errors, mistakes, or unusual die characteristics. These anomalies occur during the complex process of coin production when planchets are prepared, dies are manufactured and maintained, and coins are struck millions of times every day. Even with modern automated systems and strict quality control at the U.S. Mint, occasional errors do occur, and when they do, they often attract collector interest and market premiums. Some of these errors are relatively subtle and modest in value, while others are dramatic enough that they become sought after and valuable numismatic pieces commanding significant prices in the market. Before we explore the specific types of errors and how they affect value, it's helpful to understand how a U.S. dime like the 2018 P is made. A dime planchet, a blank metal disc, is produced by punching out pieces from large sheets of metal composed of a copper core clad with a nickel outer layer. These blanks are annealed, cleaned, and finally placed into coin presses where two steel dies, the obverse with President Franklin D. Roosevelt's portrait and the reverse with the torch and branches design, strike the blank under tremendous pressure. The result is a coin with detailed designs and a reeded edge. Every step of this process must be exact, but the volume of production and the complexity of machinery mean that sometimes anomalies occur, whether it's misfeeds, die problems, foreign objects interfering with placement, or bonding failures in the clad layers. One of the most visually striking and collectible categories of mint error on the 2018 P Roosevelt dime is the missing clad layer error. Modern dimes are clad pieces, an outer metal layer of copper nickel bonded to a pure copper core. When that outer layer fails to adhere properly to the core during planchet production, the nickel layer can lift, peel off, or even detach completely from the coin surface. On a dime with this error, the exposed copper core might be visible on either one side or both sides of the coin, providing a dramatic two-toned appearance that stands out immediately from normal examples. According to error coin listings, a 2018 Roosevelt dime with a partial missing clad layer error graded in uncirculated condition, for example, MS-64, has been sold at auction for around $225, demonstrating how dramatic deviations from standard clad appearance can boost a coin's market value well above face value. Another distinct error type that can significantly increase a 2018 P dime's value is the struck-through or strike-through error. This happens when a foreign object such as debris, grease, or dust becomes trapped between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking. When the press impacts the blank, the obstruction leaves its impression on the coin, creating irregular dents, bumps, or lines that interrupt the normal design. For instance, one documented struck-through example of a 2018 dime graded MS-65 and auctioned brought approximately $105, not extraordinarily high but still significantly above what a typical circulated or uncirculated dime of this date and mint would sell for without errors. An especially rare and exciting anomaly for 2018 P Roosevelt dimes is the off-metal error. In particular, coins struck on a steel planchet instead of the standard copper NI.